It's Tim Albright with AVNation, with an AVNation special celebrating Black History Month. Why would we tell the stories of Black individuals in the AV industry? And with me today, I am pleased to introduce you to Vanessa Calhoun from Diversified out of their Atlanta office. Welcome, ma'am.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Diversified obviously has been involved in the industry for a number of years. You guys have been growing. I met you first, met the company. I've never met you, but met the company through PSNI, our friends over there. So let's kind of, what we're doing here is giving folks kind of the space to tell their stories. Your story as a woman in the industry, as a Black woman in the industry. But before we get there, how did you get in the industry? And that sometimes is just as interesting. I always like to ask people, how you got involved. 9 times out of 10, it's falling into it or accidental, or there was no intention here. So how did Vanessa Calhoun get into the AV industry?
That's an interesting question because it has less to do with relationships or anything like that, and more to do with a personal decision. So, about 7 years ago, I just decided that a 1.5-hour one-way commute into the city of Atlanta was just too much for me. 3 hours on the road every day was just too much of my valuable time being wasted. So I really started to look for an opportunity closer to my home. And I actually happened upon Diversified. They actually were looking for a program manager, a new role in the organization. And it was, exactly the type of work that I'd done previously. So, I guess you could call it accidental, kind of, found its way to me. And they were actually at the time looking for a role that I had performed for many years. So.
Talk for a second. You've been with Diversified for 7 years now. Before then, obviously, you worked in other industries and other areas. What has been your experience as a woman, as a person of color, as a Black woman, both in the AV industry and outside of the industry, when it comes to hurdles, when it comes to challenges, when it comes to some of the kind of the areas and ways people will put hurdles in your way. What did you face and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, excellent question. For me, unlike, a lot of Black females, it's not uncommon to be the only woman, first of all, sometimes, being represented in groups, particularly in leadership circles. It's doubly, uncommon, not uncommon to be the only Black woman. For me, I guess I've been blessed with, very open-minded managers or people that I have reported to who've been open to my ideas, what I bring to the table. They've been open to, the work that I bring forward. My journey has not been without challenges. But I think, as I've said before, no is just not an option.
Yeah.
It just, I think at an early age, my parents really just said, hey, you're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to prove yourself. And I've just been really, laser focused on demonstrating my contributions through my work. My work ethic is very high. And I think, you can't kind of judge, someone's work subjectively. And I mean, that's pretty an objective perspective, right? And I just keep it there.
There's a gentleman that I got turned on to by the name of David Goggins. He wrote a book called "You Can't Hurt Me," and if you need an inspiration, go read that book. And if you don't like it, I'll give you your money back. I'm not kidding you. Him and AVNation.tv. You send me the receipt, and I'll give it to you if you're not inspired.
Thanks for sharing.
But Mr. Goggins is an African American, one of a handful of people. I think he might be the only Army Ranger and Navy SEAL. Okay, grew up in Southern Indiana, and talks about being the only. And you use that phrase, the only, being the only. not only as a person of color, but also a woman. You are an engineer, right? And you talk about your work and letting your work speak for itself. One of the things that I've learned through this process is also the need for representation.
Mhm.
How do we get to the point where you're not the only, whether that's not the only woman or not the only person of color, in a boardroom, at an engineering meeting, at a bid meeting, working on a project? How do we get to that place?
Yeah, I think leaders have to be very intentional, right? You have to be intentional about having your team represent the communities that you serve, the
Mm,
customers that you work for. Um, I mean, it can only help. It can only help an organization to have different perspectives at the table. And I think again, the culture comes from the top, and leaders have the ability to make change. They have to be open, I believe, and intentional. Um, there are dozens, hundreds, I would imagine millions, of people that are very capable that may not look like, uh, you know, folks that are in leadership positions. Give people a chance.
so Vanessa, as we wrap up here, give me kind of your sense of where you want to see either the industry, the AV industry, or the workforce in general. Where do you want to see it when it comes to working together, when it comes to race relations, when it comes to representation, by the time you retire, and just in general, you're not ready to retire, you're nowhere near retirement. But so we have a couple of years to get your dreams and get your ideas together. Where do you want to see it headed?
Absolutely. So for me, I absolutely see that, AV is converging with IT. We're seeing more and more of, those industries kind of coming together and the technologies sort of, bleeding pretty much together with not a lot of separation between the two. A lot of the systems and technology that we implement is on networks and over IP and those kind of things. So, I would like to see more representation of people of diverse backgrounds. Represented not only in these organizations but also at higher levels of leadership. I think Diversified has done a wonderful job of that. Just last year they launched a couple of initiatives around diversity, sort of empowering women specifically, and also focusing on employees of color and making sure that we are supporting and empowering those communities. So, for me, I just would like to see a lot more diversity um, in this industry and in other IT uh, spaces.
All right, very good. Appreciate your time, Vanessa Calhoun from Diversified. How do people connect with you or Diversified if they are so inclined?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also go to Diversified's website, diversifiedus.com, and we are also on LinkedIn.
All right, Vanessa Calhoun from Diversified, thank you so much for your time and for your story. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find this interview as well as a host of others. Also, check out our 2 weekly programs, one that looks at the commercial side of the industry and one that looks at the residential side. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.